Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another Rookie Card Collector 123 video. Today's video is going to be something a little bit different. I'm going to try to start making some videos talking about different hobby subjects, different topics, as opposed to continuing all the series that I've been doing since I started the channel. Hopefully some of these topics will be of interest to a lot of collectors, and there'll be some good information discussed on here. And of course, I would love to get feedback from everybody who watches the videos as to what you like, what you don't like about them, and the subject matter, of course, as well. So the topic I'm going to talk about today, as it says in the title, these are going to be oddities or strange things about some of the early 20th century era both tobacco cards and candy cards. Can also apply for strip cards from the 20s, pretty much any card. I'm just kind of focusing, most of the pictures that I'm going to show, the examples, are going to be from the tobacco or caramel card era, which tends to be around 1910 to 1920s, somewhere in that range. So a lot of the baseball cards and players we're going to look at are going to be sort of in that ballpark. And I want to start out by saying that there's a common misconception, which I find a lot doing my eBay searches. The first type of oddity I'm going to talk about is called printer scrap. And a lot of eBay sellers, anytime they have something that's listed and the item has a wrong back on it, if it's miscut, if it's has a color variation, different things like that, they'll refer to it as a printer scrap. A lot of times these will not only be pre-war cards, but they'll also be more modern cards. And printer scrap is one specific area of the oddity world that we're going to talk about. But the other major areas that I'm going to cover today are going to be ghost images, where you've got a card which doesn't show the typical player portrait or player picture on the front, but it has sort of a ghost-like appearance. And I'll show a couple of different examples of that one, what that looks like. Overprints. Overprints is where you have one printing done and then another layer printed on top of the original printing, which was not supposed to happen. Sometimes there can even be 3 or 4 levels of overprints, where you'll have 3 or 4 different things printed one on top of the other. Can make for some really interesting looking cards. Happens probably more often on the back of the card than the front, but it could be either case. I'm also going to talk about the printing situations where a card is actually printed and distributed in packs or whatever the distribution method was used. And there's going to be colors missing. Typically, there's a primary color or primary colors that'll be missing, which will completely change the color of either the front or the back or both ways, drastically change the color of the card and the way the image presents. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is going to be severe miscuts. These are not where the card is off center or the border's not showing, so PSA labels it as an MC on their flip. Severe miscuts are basically like the card, there's 2 cards and right down the center of the card is where it kind of splits. So half of the card is one player, the other half of the card is another player. Those are severe miscuts. Those are not just, well, the machine at the factory didn't cut it exactly the way it's supposed to be. So I'm going to show examples of all these different areas. I'm going to save the printer scrap for last because that tends to be the least obvious or the most confusing. And like I said, a lot of people on eBay sellers label things as printer scrap. They're really not. And I'm not sure if it's just inexperience, lack of knowledge, or if they're intentionally trying to inflate the value of their item that they're trying to sell by calling it that. But all these types of items that I'm talking about in the tobacco, caramel candy era, there is a very, I would call it a niche market for this kind of stuff. There are collectors out there that specifically collect just these types of cards, or maybe they collect other stuff too. But they have a particular focus on these types of cards, and they search endlessly, whether it be on eBay, auction houses, social media, whatever. They search for these cards, which obviously are very rare to come across, even one of them. So if that's all you're collecting, it's definitely a major challenge. And like I started to allude to, these are very rare. There is a collector base for them. So those two things combined with the fact that they're nearly impossible to come across, all combined to make for some really high value items potentially. And typically cards that are miscut, or the registration is off, or the color is not right. Most times when you think of those kinds of things, you think of a lower value happening as opposed to an increase in value. But because of all those things I mentioned, a lot of times these types of cards are going to bring a premium. They're not for everybody. They're probably not for 95% of the collectors out there, but there's a very small market, and those people are willing to oftentimes pay up for them because they're so hard to find. So without talking more, I'm going to show my first example and then kind of go from there. So this one here is I'm not sure exactly what set this is. It's a strip card set, base picturing baseball players. And this one is a example of a color variation where there's a primary color or primary colors missing. And I'm not, like I said, I just pulled these random off of the internet, so I don't know exactly what set this is from. I don't know if the image on the left is the correct one or the image on the right is correct, or maybe neither one of them is supposed to look that way. Obviously, the color is much different. And it goes to my point that one of the variations that you can get from the manufacturer in these early pre-war release cards is color variations. So this would be an example of one of those. Obviously, the card on the left also has some trimming issues as well. So that would be our first example where there's a color concern. So next one we're going to look at is, this one is one I mentioned before. This would be an example of a ghost image. So this is another strip card. This is a 1920s strip card. I believe it's W515 or 516-2-2. It looks like Walter Johnson. The image is kind of small on my screen here. But the point is, you can see the Walter Johnson, the way the card was supposed to be printed, and then to the right of that normal image is what I would call a ghost image. It's like an exact same replica of the true image, except there's no color, there's no features to the ghost image. It's just like an outline. So this would be an example of a ghost image where, one person might look at this and say, well, the registration is terrible. That's not worth anything to me. I have no interest in that. I want something that's, crystal clear image. I don't want registration that looks like that. But then there's going to be the oddity collector that's going to treasure something like this. The more off the registration is, the more ghostly the image appears. The more attractive to that buyer who's looking for these types of oddities. Okay, we're going to go to sorry, I just got to pull up the next couple of examples here. Okay. So the next example we're going to look at, this is a 1935 Gaudi 4-on-1. And you could see here, this is going to be another example of the ghost image card. Not super familiar with this card, so there may be issues with the color as well. Obviously, the registration is far off, so that it's a severe, what I would call severe ghost images. And these are, again, duplicate images of the outline of the player without all the details and the color that's part of the regular image that should be there. And this one pictures Joe Cronin, who's in the Hall of Fame, Red Sox great infielder. Okay, next one we're going to look at is okay. This is one of the Mecca double folders. So again, a 1910, 1911 era tobacco card. And this is a severe miscut. So this is where, like I said, the almost right down the center of the card, you've got an image on one side, and then the other half of the card is the image on the other side. In this case, the both images are the two halves of the same card, which should actually be flip-flopped. So the right side of the card with the glove on the hand should actually be on the right side of the card, but it's on the left side, and it's almost straight down the middle miscut. So it's actually taking half of a card before and half of the card after, and makes for a severe miscut. Again, these, so a lot of people would not be interested in this. It would just get a miscut designation from the grading company, or possibly just an authentic because the cut is so bad. But for the collector that's looking for these oddities, it could be a treasure. Okay. Okay, now we're going to look at, this is actually the other, this is another similar situation. This one has Coombs from Philadelphia. Again, it's going to be the same player, except the right side of the card is on the left side and vice versa. So another severe miscut, almost straight down the middle of the card. Oops. Okay, the next one we're going to look at is, okay, this one is a non-sport issue, and this is going to be one with color issues. So we can see there's some red in here. Obviously, the cards look like they have all the red color that they're supposed to have. It looks like there's yellow here, so it probably has yellow. We see zero blue, which is the third primary color, so the blue would be missing. And I also don't see any black or any other color. So this one, other than the white card itself, it's got the red and the yellow. It's missing the blue and the black, and possibly other colors if there was anything else. And these are just three random non-sport cards, just to show an example of color issues. This is not where, well, the shade of blue is a light blue, and some of them are a medium blue, and some of them are a little darker blue. This is very obvious, stands out extremely well. And there are collectors that look for this type of oddity as well. Okay, the next one we're going to look at is another color oddity. This one looks like it's a T206 card, I believe. And this one has yellow and white and maybe black, and is missing red, blue, at least red and blue, and possibly other colors. It's hard to tell because it's only white and yellow, basically, with a little of a dark color, maybe black. So that's another severe color printing issue. Okay. The next one we're going to look at is, this is an example, I think our first example of an overprint. This would be the back of a T206 card. And you can see the old mill stamp in red. I think it's Old Mill. It might be a different brand. You can see the Piedmont stamp in blue, and they're actually upside down from each other. And you can see in the background of the stamps, there's a player image from what looks like it would be on the front of the card. So this one has at least 3 different layers of overprint. And the people that collect these, the more layers of overprint, the more interesting, the more sought after the card is. I know I was trying to get a copy of this card off the internet to show, but I was not able to download it. There's one that's similar to this, but it's a Cy Young portrait. And you can make out Cy Young very clearly on that one. It's very similar, though. It has 2 or 3 different advertising backs stamped over each other. It has a player image. And this is actually the back of the card. It's the back of the PSA flip. So the front of the card might be normal. A lot of times the front is normal when something like this happens. Okay. Next one we're going to look at, this is another example of an overprint. This one also has a Piedmont back, a Tolstoy back, which is quite rare. Then it has the image from the front of another card. Looks like a New York player. I'm not sure who the image is, who the player is. But again, 3 different layers at least of overprints on the back of this. Okay. Sorry for the little delay. I'm still getting used to maneuvering around here, showing slides as I'm making the videos. Okay, this one has a couple of different things. This one is a T206 card, and it has sort of a ghost image. It's actually in reverse. So the back of the card, which is supposed to have the advertising on it, is blank. So that's the first oddity. These do exist, although they're very uncommon. But the back of the card also has, if you look at the baseball glove and the cap that the player is wearing on the front, the dark color only from those shows through on the back. So this could have been like a wet sheet transfer where those items from the card on top of it ended up pressing against the back of this card, which was blank, and ended up printing just the glove and the inside of the player's cap. So another really unusual oddity, and something that would be highly sought after for the collectors that collect that kind of stuff. Okay, next one we're going to look at is, okay, this one's a severe miscut. This one is Cy Young portrait is one of the cards, and I'm not sure who the other card is. SGC graded it. This is an old label, so They graded a long time ago. It got a 1.5, probably for the miscut, I guess. PSA, I would probably just label it MC plus the numerical grade. But this one is, it's not quite halfway down the card with the two players being equal. Cy Young you can see more of, but it's a very severe miscut. It's not just the normal thing you would see in a holder anytime. Okay, and then I saved for last the printer scrap, which I said was a little more complicated to explain. So I'm going to show you that now. Okay, so this is the two cards. This is the E91 dash. It's either A, B, or C. I don't remember which set the Washington players are in. But it's E91. It's James Delahanty, who's a good player, not a Hall of Famer. And you can see the two cards are the same card. One of them obviously has much bigger borders that are wavy and obviously hand cut. The other one looks like a standard E91 caramel card that you would find in a pack. So this would be the situation where the card on the right is actually a true printer scrap. So the way you define a printer scrap is it's a card that went through the entire full printing process. So I don't have the back of the card to show here, but if you did have the back would look just like a normal E91 card back with the American Caramel Company branding, stamp and all on the back. So the back is normal, the front is normal. It went through the entire printing process. All the colors are there. There's no ghost images. It's not severely miscut or anything like that. But somewhere in the printing process, the sheet that the card on the right, the uncut sheet, which is where all cards start from, they're printed on uncut sheets and then they get cut at the factory. The one on the right, at the point where the sheet was taken off the press and supposed to be cut by the machine and then inserted in the packs of caramel candy, there was some sort of issue with either all the cards or some of the cards on that uncut sheet. So even though it's fully printed, maybe the registration was off, maybe colors were missing, primary colors weren't there, whatever it was, and the person handling the press, the sheet press at that time recognized there was an issue. So that sheet would get pulled out and put aside, and it's supposed to be destroyed. So those cards would never actually go into the caramel candy packs like the card on the left would. So in that situation, as has been the case even with Topps and more modern times, Topps and Bowman, sometimes things find their way out the back door in some of these, manufacturing company situations, employee theft, whatever, however it happened. So the card on the right came from an uncut sheet that went through the whole process. And when it came time to have it machine cut, they recognized there was an issue and it was meant to be scrapped or thrown away. Somehow it wasn't. Somebody saved it. And whoever the employee, let's say, took it home and they trimmed the cards by hand with scissors. And you can see where the size of the card is much different than the card on the left. The card on the right has much wider borders, especially the top border and the left border. Now, sometimes one border the borders can be off center. You don't want to mistake that for being a printer scrap where the borders are actually bigger. But if you measure the card, the dimensions of the card, and you compare it to what the card is supposed to measure in the standard card catalog, and it comes out to significantly more, I would say a 32nd of an inch to a 16th of an inch, that could just be a machine error. Wasn't cut exactly right. If it's off by an eighth of an inch or anywhere getting near a quarter of an inch, that's not a machine cut error. That's somebody who cut it by hand and just, was not making an effort to make it look exactly the way it was supposed to be. They were just taking the sheet and cutting it into individual players with a scissors, without modern technology or anything like that. So these cards, in that situation, that would be a printer scrap. So it went through the entire printing process. It ended up on a defective uncut sheet. Somebody got a hold of that sheet, cut up the cards by hand, and you've got borders that are wider, much wider than they should be. And that's a printer scrap, and those are very rare. But a lot of times, like I said before, people on eBay will list their cards for sale. It'll be a blank back, it'll be a severe miscut, it'll have a color variation, and they'll call them printer scrap. They're not printer scrap. Those cards all got inserted in the packs like they were intended to. Very likely, at least. This is a situation where it's not. It's a printer scrap, and people that collect these oddities are very much interested in these kinds of things. And if you have a Hall of Famer, a big name player, and it's a pre-war card and it falls into this printer scrap category, or even the overprints or the ghost images or the color variations, any of the things we've looked at today, there's a niche market. Like I said, most people are not going to be interested, not want the card. But for those that do, they're willing to pay a lot of money. And the bigger name players, the bigger money they're willing to pay. So I'm going to show one more image, and it's the only card that applies to today's episode from my own personal collection. And it's a big name player for sure, and it's a printer scrap card for sure. And I saved it for last here. So this is a Dockman and Sons E92 caramel card. And those that recognize the image, this is Honus Wagner. He's in the set twice, once in a throwing pose, which is this card, and once in a batting pose. So the throwing pose I like better. Not like I had a choice. I never came across a batting version that was a printer scrap. But this one has a lot of colors. It's got the nice blue sky with the yellow, orange sunset, the green field, the dark blue cap, and then the black and white uniform with the belt and all. So you've got a lot of colors in there. You can see that the top and the bottom, I don't have a regular card to side by side to compare it to like the other one. But if you can imagine what the other one looked like, this is basically the same thing, except the top border on this one is way too big. The bottom border is probably a little too big. And it is miscut. It's not miscut. It's off center side to side. But the border here on the right, even if the card had even borders on both sides, the left and the right, this border is still a little bit wider than what it would be if it was a machine cut card. But definitely the top and bottom, I've measured it, it's more than 1/8 of an inch bigger than what the card is supposed to be. So that's not a miscut from the factory. That's not the machine made a mistake. That's somebody got a hold of a sheet that had this Wagner card on it. They cut it by hand. And this is the end result, is you've got a true printer scrap card. And you can see SGC, they graded this one a long time ago. They just graded authentic because of the oddity and didn't bother to call it hand cut. Obviously, it's hand cut. But very interesting niche, I think, in the market. And something, if you want to look for or try to collect something different, the rarities, you can just collect Ty Cobbs or Honus Wagners or Cy Youngs, or you can just collect Hall of Famer oddities. You know, there's a lot of different ways you can go with this type of collecting, but be prepared to spend a good amount of money if you decide to get into these, especially if you're going after the bigger name players. So anyway, hope you got some good information and enjoyed today's video, something a little different from my usual rookie cards and Negro League series that I normally run. If this one gets good feedback, I'll continue doing more topics similar to this and show slides and images of the cards as I'm describing them and talking about them more. So anyway, hope you enjoyed today's video. Have a great day, and I'll catch you guys again on the next one.